Right. Welcome to Blondes, Books, and Campfire Tales. I am one of your hosts, Bethany Stutzman. We have Krystal Michelle right there, and we have our fabulous special guest, Brandy. Thank you, Brandy, for joining us again. We always
Thank
enjoy having you on
you.
here.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Thank you.
Before we get started, I kind of didn't prep you, Krystal. Sorry. But Krystal has a new show that's going to be starting soon with Weird Realities are taking over the show. Did you want to talk a little bit or kind of throw a little shout out to it?
Yeah, so it's murders, mystery, and mayhem. And it's not the first episode because, like Bethany said, I'm actually taking over hosting duties. But my first episode as official host, we're doing mysterious deaths and murders on movie sets. And that is going to be on May 29th. Bethany, do you remember?
Nope.
I'm like,
Let me let me check our
let me
messages.
just,
I know this is what happens when I just throw you out there and I didn't prep you at all.
let me look at my calendar really quick. Because there was a couple dates. I think it's May 27th.
Okay.
May 27th. It's a Saturday. And it'll be 2 p.m. Pacific and 5 p.m. Eastern. Yeah.
Nice.
So if you want to learn about how people died on movie sets, that's
who
going to
doesn't want to know about that? That's always interesting.
Yeah, I mean, some are murders, some are just mysterious deaths. I mean, there's just Hollywood has weird ish going on all the time, so that's what we're going to be talking about.
Yeah, I mean, look at the Kardashians. So there you go.
And we're not going to be talking about them.
I know. Unfortunately, no. So anyway, tonight we're going to talk about the babysitter and the man upstairs. I'm excited about this one because it seems like Krystal, you and I, we keep saying we're going to talk about this one, and then another episode will pop up and another idea, and we keep pushing it off. So I'm kind of excited to actually get to it because I feel like it's another one of those just very classic urban legends. Talk about the morality of that time, and I feel like everybody knows a version of this one. So let me start off. I'll get into kind of like the legend of it, but let me just start off and ask: have either of you babysat before?
Yeah.
No.
Nope.
No.
I did not do very much babysitting, but when I was 13, I did have a regular babysitting job where I actually spent the night. Thursdays through Sundays. The parents were both cops that worked the overnight shift. They worked 12-hour shifts those 4 days. So their daughter was only like 2 years younger than me, but she was just a little bit too young to be left alone all night. So that's my experience in babysitting. Luckily, nobody called me. If they had, there would have been 2 cops on their asses super fast. So.
That's true.
Nice. Well, we'll get into kind of more of our experiences, but let me just kind of start the original
experience.
Huh?
We need your experience.
I know. I'll get into it.
Okay. You say so.
That's the purpose. I feel like this is kind of like a two-parter because you have the urban legend and then you have like the story that it's based off of.
Yes.
And they're both very, like, they're not very different, but they're different. So I'm going to start with the urban legend. And then since Krystal is kind of like our true crime person, if you want to go into like what it's kind of based off of or I can, whichever works. But basically urban legend, I'm going to kind of read a little bit from my phone here. But a teenage girl is babysitting at night. The children have already been put to bed upstairs and the babysitter is downstairs. She's watching television. Then the phone rings and the caller tells her to check the children. The adolescent dismisses the call and goes back to watching television, kind of normal. The anonymous caller dials back several times. Eventually, the babysitter calls the police, who inform her that they will trace the next call. After the stranger calls again, the police return her call, advising her to leave immediately. So she evacuates the home and the police meet up with her. Then they explain that the calls were actually coming from inside the house and that the unidentified prowler was calling her after already killing the children upstairs. So that's kind of what I got from the original urban legend. Krystal, do you happen to know about what it's based off of? Or I've got it, so I can go into it too. Or if you have it.
So Janet Christman was 13 years old in 1950, I believe. And she was babysitting for a family. She had been actually wanting to go to some sort of party that night, but she decided to babysit instead because she wanted the extra money, which as a 13-year-old, yeah, like what else are you going to do for money? So she went to babysit, and apparently another gentleman who had asked her to babysit his kids that night, she obviously turned him down because she already had this job. The parents left her with instructions. They went out about 10:30 o'clock that night. The cops got a call from somebody. They actually did not have telephone tracing technology back then in the 50s. Even in the 60s, when the legend started coming around, they really didn't have that yet. But they just got a phone call of somebody screaming help, and then the line got cut off. They couldn't do much about it because they couldn't trace where the call had come from. They didn't know if it was just a kid playing a prank. They didn't know. They were like, well, maybe the person will call back if they actually need help. And then I believe the parents arrived home between 11 and midnight, and they found that she had died. She had been murdered. She had been sexually assaulted, and a window was broken. But they didn't, the cops determined that the window was probably broken as a decoy, because the way the window was broken, if somebody had crawled either in or out of the window, there would have been blood on the window. There was no way they would have been able to get through it without cutting themselves. So they do think that Janet let them in. So that's why they thought potentially it could have been someone that she knew. And the other gentleman that had asked her to babysit apparently had a very disturbing crush on her. And so there was suspicion on him that he had done it. His name's John Mueller, I think. Robert Mueller. Robert Mueller.
Robert.
It is Robert. I don't know why I was thinking John. I might have known a John Mueller at one point in my life.
You did.
Mueller.
Thank you.
You
My
did.
bad. Sorry, John.
Fuck him.
I was like, no, that's wrong. That's the person I knew. No, Robert Mueller. No relation to John. So he was the prime suspect, but there wasn't enough evidence to convict him. There was another unnamed suspect at one point that apparently had gone to another house where another young girl was babysitting about a week or two before. And when she saw him, he knocked on the door, but she looked out the window, he creeped her out. She never answered the door. Thankfully, nothing happened to her. But yeah, so there was two suspects. One was never named. And unfortunately, there just wasn't enough physical evidence to convict anybody. So it's still an unsolved murder.
Well, let's say
Oh,
hello
hi,
to Wanda. And then Mike.
Hello.
So glad you guys were able to join us. Yeah, so that's kind of creepy. Just a little. Oh, hey, Andy. Sorry. He's got to make his appearance. He's like, feed me. Yeah, it's already kind of creepy babysitting in a house that you don't live in. Mm-hmm. And you're kind of supposed to be in charge as a teenager. And that's mixed feelings right there. Because most of us, when we start babysitting, you're teenagers. Yeah. And it's ooh, you're going to be independent and hey, you're in charge. And then at the same time, you're I'm in a house that I don't know anything about.
Yeah. And 13 is that prime age where people start to be well, you want money now because you want to do things without your parents now.
Yeah.
And sure, you're old enough to take care of little kids. Why not?
Exactly. And who determines if we're old enough to take care of little kids? Sometimes, like you said, you were 2 years older than the kid that you babysat, right?
Yeah, so I definitely feel like my babysitting situation was not the normal babysitting situation. Like it was more like we hung out, did our homework, had dinner, like on the weekends we'd watch a bunch of movies and stuff. It was almost like having a slumber party with people, like with friends my age. But it was, it was just like having somebody just a little bit older so that they didn't have an 11-year-old spending the night alone, which I wouldn't want an 11-year-old spending the night alone either.
Yeah.
Like, but apparently at 13,
totally fine.
Alone.
Once you get those teens, you're like suddenly a responsible adult.
Right? I mean, my dad wasn't religious, so I never had a bat mitzvah, but, if he was, I would have been a woman in the Jewish faith at that time.
Been a woman. No, mine with babysitting, it was, so I had this girl who lived across the street from me, and she was super adorable. And Krystal, for those of you who don't know, Krystal and I were in color guard. So we did like the flags and the rifles, and we had sorry, I have Play-Doh. We had the flags and the rifles, and we were like playing around and stuff. And I would go perform in front of in my driveway, and the little girl was so adorable. She was like 4, and she would come out with her little chair, and she'd sit her chair up, and she would like
Sorry.
Brandy going after her.
Sorry. My child is sleeping and my cat will not stop meowing.
I was gonna say, is it a cat or a kid?
Both will get that hand. Sorry,
I get distracted easily.
So this little girl would get so excited to watch me do color guard, and she asked her parents to let me babysit her. And so Londa. But yeah, she would ask her parents to let me babysit her. And so I would go over to babysit her. I didn't know the parents at all. I knew the little girl. I didn't know the parents. And they asked me to babysit their child, never met me. And by the time I showed up to babysit, she was already asleep. So it was like, I didn't even get to hang out with the kid. And when I went and showed up to the house and the parents left, it was, they would always have their blinds open in their living room, and their living room opened up to the backyard, which opened up to the golf course behind them. So it was like giant open field with like all these huge windows in the back that they like their blinds were electric, and I couldn't figure out how to close the blinds. So I had open blinds with the darkness behind me. That was creepy in itself. And I didn't get to actually hang out with the kid because the kid was already asleep. So I was like literally by myself for hours, just hanging out.
Yeah, that's a big note for me.
Yeah, no, I raided their fridge.
There's something about an open window to an open field. Like, I can't do it. Like so many back, like the backs of houses. Like they just have these open, like sliding glass doors, open windows. Like the house I grew up in, we had these huge picture windows in the back of the house. But we also lived on an acre lot, and all you saw from my back windows was a mountain, and nobody could see in.
It was like the pool in the mountain.
Yeah, the pool in the mountain. That was it. And nobody could see in. So I was kind of okay with that. But I would have times where I'd be like in front of one of those large windows when I was home alone at night. And I'd be like, what if somebody snuck into the backyard and they can see me right now? Like, I don't do open windows.
But like you have those thoughts. Yeah. So imagine if those thoughts were kind of validated and you suddenly started getting phone calls. Okay, so like let me just start off with the people who are younger than us, and they're not familiar with phone calls back in that time. In that time, you did not know who was calling you.
Yes.
We didn't have caller ID at one point.
Yes. If you had *69, that was your caller ID. But you didn't know who was calling you, much less who was calling the person
unless they blocked their call.
Yeah.
So they blocked their call and then called you.
Yeah. So you legit just answered the phone with like the hope and a whim that it was a nice person. And so imagine getting a phone call. You're already in a strange house. You're already kind of unsettled a little bit because you're not in your normal environment, and you start getting a phone call from someone who's creeping you the F out. Like that's what they're doing.
Yeah. I mean, I had one phone call like that where it was just like the most oddest thing I've ever had in my life, but thankfully nothing crazy happened after it.
What did they say?
What they do on the phone call?
I don't know. They randomly called, and I thought, it was just somebody I knew, or, I just didn't have their number or something. But they were just like, I answered and they were just like incoherent, but like just rambling and cussing and going off on me and all this other stuff. And finally I just like hung up, and they kept calling back to the point where like I had to block their number. And I'm like, I don't know if it was like a joke, or,
Sounds like
like
a
people prank
drunk.
call, or maybe somebody didn't like me and got my phone number. Like, very possible. It was just like, it was so weird. Like, I try to make out what they were saying, at least to me, to be like, maybe I recognize their voice or something. But no, I couldn't.
Man.
So luckily, like, nothing came over it because it was cell phone time. It was in my 20s. So, but it was still a really weird phone call.
Yeah.
I can see that. Londa says, having a dog gave me superpowers to know if a creeper was out there.
I mean, you would think that, but like my dog would start barking if somebody drove past our house.
Yeah.
So
my cats just
barking
didn't care. They were like, meh, as long as I'm fed.
Yeah, my dog barking didn't necessarily mean a single thing. But yeah, I can see how if you do have the right type of dog.
The big dogs. The big dogs.
Yeah.
I don't know. To imagine that it's kind of based off that story where it's still unsolved. The girl was only 13. Like, imagine what you were doing when you were 13 and to be faced in that situation. And just like the brutality of what happened to her.
Okay, so we all know my babysitting experience. But when I was 13, like, I also would watch Unsolved Mysteries when I was home alone at night and freak myself out. It was
like Unsolved Mysteries, X-Files.
Yeah. I'm like, okay, I'm home alone, and they were just talking about UFOs, and I have to go to the other end of the house and hide in my room now. Like, I didn't need a phone call to freak myself out when I was 13.
And then Brandy, I don't know if you had, but like Krystal and I growing up, we didn't really have basements. But I would imagine, did you ever have a basement?
No. We didn't have a basement.
Okay, I remember my grandparents' basement in Iowa, and it was like you turn off that light and you were like a marathon runner going up those stairs before the like darkness that got you.
I feel like growing up and like being 13, I still did that. Like, you turn the lights off, you just like run to your room.
Yeah, I'm almost 40 and I'll still do that. I can't do basements.
They are creepy. Definitely.
Yeah. What were you saying, Krystal?
Well, like all the basements I've been in anyway, there's a light switch near the door or at the top of the stairs.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ours was always at the bottom of the stairs. I don't know why.
That's just poor planning.
Really odd. Yeah.
That architect had like a rough childhood.
They just really hated the person they were building the house for. What can I do to make your life hell?
Yeah. Someday a teenager is going to be here and I'm going to just ruin their lives right now.
It's like putting the light switch all the way on the opposite side of the kitchen.
Exactly.
How annoying was
I've had that before. That's so frustrating.
Oh, that's so frustrating.
Or when it's super early in the morning or late at night and you go to hit the light switch and you realize you hit the garbage disposal.
Oh my god.
And that is the loudest noise ever.
That's true.
Especially if the rest of the house is sleeping.
Exactly.
You're just like, oh.
Yeah, oops.
This is true. I understand why people label their light switches now. For sure.
So this tale actually inspired a lot of movies and scenes in movies. Everything from like the opening scene in Scream to When a Stranger Calls to The Babysitter and the Man Upstairs. That's another story. Have you guys seen any of those movies or can kind of relate any experience from movies to that?
Well, Black Christmas too.
Yeah, Black Christmas.
I feel like, and that's one of the, I mean, I think there's so many movies that are like, oh, we're the first slasher. But I think that was like one of like, not maybe the first, but definitely one of the first. Like, because some people say Psycho's the first slasher, and I get it. But like Psycho, like all the violence is like more alluded to than actually on screen.
Well, and it's also in the first like half hour of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's some at the end, but
Yeah,
like the main one. When
Yeah.
did Psycho come out? Was it like 1959?
I think it was the 60s.
Let me see. I gotta look it up now.
And then I think Black Christmas was 79, and I think the first one, A Stranger Calls, was 79 too.
1960 was
Okay.
Psycho. Yeah.
Yeah.
What was the other one we were looking at? Black Christmas.
Yeah, I think that was 79.
1974.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and then because like Halloween came in like the
78,
80s.
I think.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
1978. So I was telling you guys a little bit before we started here that I was just watching the 1979 When a Stranger Calls, because I was like, hey, I've seen the newer one, but I didn't watch the original one. And I guess the original one started out as a short where it was basically like the first 20 minutes of the movie where it's the babysitter doing the babysitting. And with the success of Halloween from 1978, the director was like, hey, I'm going to make this into a full-length film. And I guess like it went on to go down in the history of some of the horror where it's like, hey, best opening scene, stuff like that. But that, for me, it was the opening scene. And that was it. The rest of the movie, I haven't finished the movie because I just got so bored with the rest of the movie because everything that was exciting happened in the first 20 minutes. And then after that, I'm bored. Like I ended up renting the newer one because I'm like, I just want some action, I guess.
Because they already had a full story in that first 20 minutes.
They did, because what the rest of the film is based off of is after the babysitter was basically the kids were already dead and the babysitter survived. And it's 7 years later and the psychopath escapes from prison, kind of like, or from the psychiatric center. Sorry. And, Halloween theme right there. And he goes and he torments the babysitter again. And I'm just like, I have not got to the point where he tormented her. It's just basically the detective following up on the case, just walking around, Gruff McGruff, like trying to solve the case. And I'm like, I'm so bored right now. Huh?
Does he have the fedora?
He needs it. Like that would spice up the movie if he had that. That's how boring this movie is so far. No, if it's better, I'm sorry. I'll give it a chance, but I'm so bored with this movie right now.
I mean, I think that's a risk that they took, like, because it's one thing with the newer one, it was written as a movie. Yes. So the action's all there, but they took a full complete story that was 20 minutes and they're like, okay, they didn't even reshoot it. They're just like, we're just going to add stuff onto it now.
Exactly. Stacy says hi.
Oh, hi, Stacy. I bet Stacy has some good babysitting stories.
Yeah. We'll hear it, Stacy. But that kind of goes back to a lot of these original urban legends, like the Vanishing Hitchhiker and the Hook Man. They're all kind of based off of morality and the principles of that time, where it's like, hey, do good or something bad's going to happen to you. But with the case of the babysitter and the man upstairs, she wasn't doing anything bad. Like, so I think that's what was scary.
So one thing, so I don't know if I've mentioned this on this podcast before, so I'm going to mention it because I use this book like almost every single episode. The Vanishing Hitchhiker by Jane Harold Brunvand. This is like my biggest resource for this show. And it's something that they were talking about is with the babysitter urban legend, it's really talking about like how it's like, it's very patriarchal in that, you have this teen girl, she's doing what she's meant to do as a female. She's taking care of the children. And like, it was just all the stuff I hadn't thought of before. And I think some of it to me, I think is kind of like stretching and looking for things, but they're like, and you have the babysitter, the attacker is upstairs on top of the woman, which is, men are on top of women in society. And he's like going after her and making sure, like, because he keeps like on, on one of the, because there's obviously different versions, but he's like, are the children safe? And it's like, how, it's like, how attentive are you being? All your attention needs to be on the kids. That's your sole purpose. And you're not upstairs checking on them. So now they're in danger and you're in danger. And because she wasn't, and I'm just like, I feel like that's a little bit of a stretch, but I kind of get it.
I kind of get it. Yeah. Because in the one I was watching, one thing I noticed is that surprisingly, the guy that the babysitter has a crush on, his name is Robert. So I was like, oh, interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting. And especially if you look at the real life case.
Exactly. That's what I was thinking. I was like,
and she definitely did not have a crush on him.
No.
He had a very deep crush on her.
But it was like she was on the phone with her best friend. And like, here's what I thought was interesting. The best friend was talking about how Robert asked her to hang out with him that weekend. The best friend, not the babysitter. And she was like, and you know that I like Robert just as much as you like Robert. But I thought that, you're my friend. So I said no. But then the babysitter was like, knowing this information, was like, okay, we'll give Robert this phone so he can call me. Like, give him the phone number. So like she blew past her friend. Her friend like totally. Sorry, Axel's home.
I saw the door open behind you.
I totally didn't hear it. I just saw the movement. But it's like the friend followed the friend code where she was like, hey, I know we both like this guy and I turned him down. And the babysitter is like, hey, give him this phone number. So I guess maybe that's kind of the morality issue. Like she didn't.
Yeah, don't break girl code.
Exactly. You don't know me.
You should never break girl code. A psycho will come kill you.
But what would be interesting is if like someone came out with this version of the story, but gender swap. Like because we all know how crazy girls can be. Like crazy girls can be. If you get like a guy babysitting and he has like a stalker girl upstairs wanting the attention, I feel like that would be way more like Rosemary's Baby, like just crazy.
All right. So that's your next book.
No, I got to finish Highway first. Rich says hello. What's up, Rich? How you doing? Hi, Rich. So I don't know. I think that would be kind of fun. Like that would be the next step in this genre. Would be like a gender swap.
I'm surprised they haven't done that yet.
I know. But if you think of it, like that whole mystery of who's on the phone, like now we have caller ID, so like we all know.
You can still talk,
yeah, but it's still kind of like you hear the phone ring and you're either like super excited or you're like nervous or whatever. Or if you get a blocked phone call, it's probably spam, but you never know. You still answer sometimes.
I mean, so I call people for a living. Well, not for a living. That's not the main purpose of my job. I'm not a telemarketer. But I do have to call people. I have to call clients. And a lot of times, like they're a new client. They don't know my phone number. They don't answer. So they call me back and they're like, oh, I didn't recognize the phone number, so I didn't answer. And I'm like, well, yeah, I get it. I don't either.
Mm-hmm.
If I don't recognize your phone number, I don't answer, because if it's important and I need to talk to you, you'll leave a message.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you like the...
Because we're all reading Stacy's comment.
I know.
I didn't mean to make you cut you off. I thought you were ending and I'm like, oh, we can post the comment.
No, that's fine. No, you didn't cut me off. I just got distracted by Stacey's comment. No, but it's just, I lost my train of thought now.
No. You said that when you call people, they don't always know that it's you that's calling. So then they call back and they're like, oh, it's you.
Yeah, because I leave a message and they're like, oh, I do need to talk to her.
I do need to answer this.
This is a person I need to talk to.
Exactly.
Yeah, so they call me back and they're always so apologetic. I'm like, don't apologize. I literally do the exact same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, how many of us have screen our phone calls, especially before when we had actual answering machines and you could hear them versus like just leaving a voicemail. So you could actually hear them talking in real time and you could decide whether to answer or not.
Yeah. Well, as a kid, there was no screening phone calls. My brothers and I would like race to the phone and argue over who the phone was.
Oh, yeah. No. My parents were in Amway, so we screened the phone calls because if it was a business call, we did not want to answer that.
True. Yeah. But yeah. But I mean, then you get to the point, like as an adult, you don't want to talk to anybody.
Exactly. Now as millennials, we're like, we screen the phone call because we just don't want to talk.
We don't even answer the door unless we know who it is.
We kind of slowly sulk off the couch.
I wasn't expecting anybody. I actually got a knock on my door the other day, which really threw me off because I live in a secured building. So you can't get to my door. But the delivery people do have access, and it was a huge thing. So they actually came to my door.
What'd you get?
Ropes and harnesses.
Whoa.
Climbing roofs.
Oh. I was like, okay.
So I'm into this new hobby, you guys. Tying a lot of people up. I needed a lot of ropes for it.
I went in a totally different direction right there.
Yeah.
Wow.
No, this was for work. It was like climb roofs.
Gotcha.
Oh.
Yeah.
I like how Brandy's just like trying to be nice right now.
Brandy's like,
not what I was thinking.
Yeah, I know where you're whining.
I'm like, climbing mountains, like
Sure.
climbing somebody.
Probably, yeah. But
let's see. Londa, she goes, Krystal, it sounds like the start of a scary movie for sure.
Right? Like, this is a building nobody should be in. Nobody should be knocking on my door. I can't even get the delivery guy to come. Like, I can't even get pizza to my door. I have to go outside.
Really? Oh.
Yeah.
I hate people knocking on my door, so
I hide when like the Amazon guy stops by. Like I even know he's stopping by. They're like, we're coming by to drop off your order. And I'm like, I'm gone.
I mean, they don't even, Amazon doesn't knock anyway, though.
They don't. Well, no, my Amazon does. Yeah, they'll knock on the door.
Mine does sometimes. They do. They'll just like knock and like leave or something.
Yeah. They'll go. As soon as I see my cat's ears perk up, I'm like, what's happening? Like, what's going on?
I'm like, I don't think, well, Brandy, you have an upstairs.
Yeah.
So this could potentially happen to you still.
Yeah. If somebody knocks on the door, I just pretend like I'm hiding from the cops. And then I go upstairs and look and try to sneak out the window and see who's at my door.
I mean, honestly, if I was home alone as a kid or if I was babysitting, I would have done the same thing. Which, you know, with Janet, like the girl that did actually get murdered, like they think she opened the door. And I'm like, if I was babysitting and a knock came at the door, I wouldn't answer it.
Yeah, I'm not.
I would turn off all the lights, tell the kids to quiet down if they were still awake. I'd throw myself on the floor.
And like, even with Janet, it's like they kind of set it up to be creepy because I didn't research it too much, but from what I understand, the father actually showed her where the shotgun was and was like, hey, do not open the door until you turn on the porch light. And like, if you recognize someone, then you can open the door. And then when the cops showed up, they said that the porch light was on. So that to me says that she recognized someone, which kind of always leads back to Robert. But yeah, that's what the minimal facts that we have.
But I question that because I have seen that in a couple articles, but like a couple other articles don't mention that. And I kind of wonder because they aren't articles actually from 1950.
Yeah.
When it happened. So I kind of wonder if that kind of became some of the mythos around it. You know?
Did. Yeah.
I feel like people
it could also be
like really friendly back then. People were like more welcoming to their neighbors and opening doors and like, you know, you open your door and like ask your neighbor for sugar or something. Like it wasn't until like people started getting like kidnapped from hitchhiking that people really stopped, I would say, like being friendly to people and trusting strangers.
Yeah.
So around that time frame, it probably would make sense that she would open the door for somebody she doesn't know, in all honesty, or somebody she does know.
Yeah. I mean, if you're in a society where you answer the phone and you don't know who it is because you're just used to being polite and answering, that's what you do. I mean, I can see that. I can also see like if they were in a rural area.
Yeah.
Like I remember stories that my grandmother used to tell me of like, I mean, at the time they called them gypsies, but of people just showing up or being on their land or their property, because this was like Iowa where you had a ton of land and you had to literally chase people off your land who were just like showing up. But then yeah, like Mike says, people never unlock their doors. It's kind of like, I think it just kind of depends on where you live. If you were in a rural area where you're always dealing with people who were on your land, then yeah, you locked your door, you had a shotgun, like that was normal. But if you were in like a suburb, then you didn't lock your doors. Everything was Pleasantville. You know, I think it just kind of depended on where you were at.
We didn't lock our doors, honestly, until like 2000s.
Yeah. No, my mom always locked the door. And then she had us like, she taught me how to put like our keys in between our fingers. Like,
yeah. the best defense you've got.
I think like during the day we wouldn't lock our door, and especially my brother's friends when they were teenagers, they would always just randomly show up at the house all the time. Like, you know, so it definitely was different in the 90s, which was like 40 years later. But like some things were kind of the same, but I know like at nighttime, or if nobody was home, we'd lock the door, and at nighttime the door would be locked. But other than that, yeah, during the day we wouldn't have the door locked because people were in and out all day long. We'd be going out playing in the desert or whatever, and people would be coming over. And I think sometimes it's hard for us to like really know like how trusting people were, because like from the 50s to the 90s when we were all growing up, it was so different. You know, it's just like the kids that are growing up now, like we know what it was like in the 90s, but to them it's a completely alien concept. So
it just made me think of this movie, and I don't know why I can't think of the title of it. It's the movie with the guy from Aerosmith's daughter, The Strangers, I think.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
that's kind of like a version of it, only it's more of like don't answer the door.
Yeah, don't answer the door, don't answer the right? They got in your house, but they weren't originally in your house. But it kind of reminded me of that, like, you know, they let the people in and then they ended up getting murdered by them and things like that. So they were very like trusting back then, which is, I mean, I guess that was normal, but nowadays, like, it's definitely not normal.
Yeah. So with this legend, we know it's kind of started the babysitter murders kind of theme. It also kind of started, you know, like the beginning of Scream, When a Stranger Calls, Black Christmas. Have you guys seen Black Christmas?
Yeah.
Did you see the new one or the older one?
Both. I think there's three.
The newer one.
There might be.
I think there's three. Because they just came out with because there's the original from the 70s. I think there's one that came out in the mid 2000s, and I think they redid it again in like 2019. Hold on, I'm checking IMDb, and I think I've seen all three.
Okay,
I only saw the 2000s.
Do you guys think that this urban legend being specific to the babysitters, do you think this pretty much inspired like the babysitter murders in terms of Halloween and Jason and like the teenager aspect? Do you guys feel like it kind of led to the inspiration of that?
I think the original, like Janet's murder, like really inspired a lot of it for sure. And I think to an extent, like that inspired, like Brandy was mentioning, The Strangers. And yes, there are 3 versions of Black Christmas. I think over Christmas time, for some reason, I decided that was going to be what I was going to watch for Christmas movies. I watched all 3.
That and Krampus, classic Christmas.
Yes. Classic Christmas movie. Oh, I want to see the new one, Violent Night, but it came on streaming after Christmas. And I'm like, I want to wait till Christmas time to watch it.
I feel exactly that. I didn't get a chance to watch it, and I'm like, I gotta wait till Christmas now.
You know, and they keep like being like, your recommendations. I'm like, it's not Christmas time.
Don't recommend this yet.
But I do think, like, pretty much anytime you have, like, the whole babysitter and they get a creepy call or they think they hear a noise inside the house, like, it's always what I think of is the call that's coming from upstairs.
I guess maybe what highlights this as, like, maybe for intriguing for people is, like, that she would have had to have been stalked.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the killer would have had to known that she was gonna be there by herself, and the people who own the house obviously weren't the target. So so to me, it's like, was this a stranger? Was this the person that she was originally used to babysit for? So, like, they would have had to stalk her kind of and, seen when she was going over to babysit. And it's like, well, how long were you watching her? And, were you a stranger? Were you somebody familiar to her? How long were you watching her? Was she the original target, or was it supposed to be like the family? So it's kind of intriguing because it's like you don't really know, because back then they didn't have genealogical DNA and things like that. So you didn't have that kind of stuff for call tracing. But, it's interesting that the night that the parents aren't there and she's babysitting, she's murdered.
I do think she was the target. And I think I do agree. Like, it was, even if she wasn't, like, so if it wasn't Robert Mueller and it was that other guy, the unnamed man, that, like, even if he wasn't stalking, like, specific girls, I think he was looking out for, like, a babysitting situation, especially since another girl got somebody, like, knocking on her door while she was babysitting. Like, I do think it was something like that. Like, I definitely think it was and I think that that's a thing that's picked up in all the movies that are based off of this. Even if it's just like little scenes like in Scream and things like that, it's very calculated and planned. It's not random. It's not, oh, I'm just going to go kill somebody in this house. It's, this person's alone in this house. Now's my time. I'm going to go kill them.
And I'm going to go down the rabbit hole with it and say, like, they probably knew where she was at, because back then you would post an ad in a newspaper with your information looking for a babysitter. So, that's how people stalked other people as well, of newspaper ads and ads on social media and things like that. Back then, newspaper. So they got the information that address was looking for a sitter. Recently they're looking for a sitter, so that person could have been stalking that location until they found their next, their victim. So.
Which is why nowadays, never post your location on social media.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's like back then I thought that Robert had actually asked her to babysit his kids, and she said no because she was babysitting the other ones. So, like, he knew where she was at and when. And then he even didn't he like grope the mother before?
He had like
had creepy vibes, pretty much.
He was 27 years old and he had a crush on a 13-year-old. That kind
that's just creepy in general.
That to me says everything you need to know about him. But he did. He had been groping people, and when she told him no, she did tell him she's like, oh no, I'm babysitting for this family that night. So he definitely knew she was going to be there and no adults were going to be around.
Yeah.
So
definitely crazy. I don't know. But I think that's what just to kind of wrap up on it, like, that's what makes this more creepy, is because all the stories that we've talked about before, it's because the teenagers were doing something that they weren't supposed to be doing. So it all kind of comes back to the morality of that time, of what was appropriate and what was not. And a lot of these urban legends were like warnings, like, don't do this, don't do that, or this is going to happen, some crazy thing. And here it was, a responsible young woman who decided not to go to the party, but to stay and babysit and be responsible and take initiative, and she's not safe. So I think that in itself is what makes this story such a classic and so unsettling. Like, even when you look at, like, like Scream was influenced. What was Drew Barrymore characters doing? She was at home watching a scary movie instead of going out. She was just hanging out in her home doing her own thing.
But she was having her boyfriend come over. There's your morale.
Yeah, that was true. Okay, they had to throw that in there. But it was like, that's kind of what makes it creepy, is that you're not safe, whether you're the good kid or the bad kid. Like something, if it's your time, it's your time kind of thing.
Yeah, and that's definitely more real to life. Like, a lot of these urban legends are morality tales trying to scare kids straight. But when it comes to real life violence, it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter if you're the rebel that's going out and partying every weekend and drinking and smoking and flirting with all the guys. Like, or if you're the kid that's at home Saturday night studying and preparing, like doing all your homework and volunteering at the homeless shelter. Like, in real life, either is just as likely to be murdered by some random crazy killer.
Exactly.
And,
I think it's the unknown. It's you don't know. And a lot of the films now, it's always someone who does something that they're not supposed to do. And they get the consequence of it. But it's the true horror ones are people who are truly innocent. And they don't no one deserves, to be brutally murdered. But it's like some, you're like, well, you kind of set yourself in the situation, so I'm not surprised that something negative happened towards you. But it's like,
worst. Victim blaming is the worst.
Yeah. But then at the same time, when you have someone who genuinely followed the rules, they did what they were supposed to do, and something horrific happens to them, that I feel is like the most just like scary thing. I love Landa. Oh my gosh, look what she just posted.
I agree.
Oh my gosh. I can't repeat that.
Well, I can.
Yeah, there you go.
Bitches.
My parents watch the show. I can't do it.
I think your parents know that I'm a little bit more rebellious. So.
Oh my goodness. Well, we're kind of wrapping up the show here. Do you guys have any kind of final thoughts on it, or?
Well, one thing I thought was interesting.
Yeah, solve the case. I'm just kidding.
Oh my god! No, I was totally thinking about that. I'm like,
it's been enough time,
y'all.
Like, can we get some DNA from Robert Mueller and from Janet Christman? Like, is it possible? Like, there's probably no DNA evidence left. They probably didn't save anything that would have.
Yeah, I was gonna say that would be if they actually save stuff.
Like, yeah, when they knew DNA was about to be a thing, like when the science was already moving that direction, they would save stuff, being like, well, we don't have the science for this yet, but we're going to. But I think the 50s, it was too early to think like that.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
One day.
There was something that I thought was interesting up here. Apparently there was, with this one, there was definitely like different areas had different versions of the tale, which I think is common. But she mentioned in here, oh no, my book just cracked.
I heard it.
Sorry. But one of the ones that she mentioned, I had to point it out, because apparently the Arizona version, and this is the one that I grew up hearing in Arizona, so I was just like, oh, okay. So with the Arizona version, he was ringing, and it was the one where he's like, I'm upstairs with the children, you'd better come up. Not like, oh, you need to check on the children, you need to do this. He's like, nope, I'm here, I'm upstairs, you need to come up. And he kept calling and doing that, like saying, I'm upstairs with the children, come up. And then she ended up going to a neighbor's, and when they got there, they found it was one of the kids, and he had a tape recorder and he was playing it upstairs.
Oh, dang. I didn't hear that one.
Yeah.
So that's a messed up kid. That's a young Robert right there. He's taking notes.
Whoa.
And I heard other ones where like it wasn't the kid and they were still murdered, but that's definitely like growing up. It was always the one where he was specifically saying, because there's like the version where he's laughing. There's the version where he's like, go check on the children. There's the version where he's saying, I'm going to be there in 15 minutes.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of different versions.
Stacey, it's a book. Books are precious.
We are very devastated when our books die.
It's true.
We hold funerals.
So, but I just thought that it was interesting. I was like, oh, I would definitely say that's an Arizona version, because that was always what, in whatever version I heard of it, whether the kid survived or it was the kid doing it, it was that whole, I'm upstairs with the children. You better come up. Unless I was reading Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. That one was, that one was a little bit different. That was the countdown version. So, but
Londa relates with you there. That's your reference material.
It is. This is my reference material. So is Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, honestly.
I don't know about you guys, but I have like, for certain books, I have my reading book, and then I have my display book. Like I have 2 copies of some books, because I'm like, this one is my nice display one, and this one's like the one that I read that cracks and stuff. I don't know. But that's me. You guys are silent, so I'm just gonna.
I mean,
no, that's a smart idea, especially if you like that book.
I mean, I do have a version. I do have, that's my only copy of the book It, and it's literally taped together. And it's not one I'm ever going to get rid of, because it was my brother's.
Derek's?
Yeah, it was Derek's. So I'm never going to get rid of it.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe I should get another copy of it so I can read a different copy and let that one just sit taped together. But,
well, I have some that are signed. So it's like my signed books are my display ones. And then I have the ones that I read that are like cracked and worn and stuff. And I still keep those too, because I reread them. Like I reread some books multiple times. But like my ones that are signed, like I cherish those. My Goosebumps one with R.L. Stine, like if I had a glass case with lasers, I would do that. Because I cherish that book.
The lasers might be a little bit expensive, but
I don't know. It's worth it. It's R.L. Stine, Krystal.
I know.
This is
It's Stine.
I have the picture with him.
It's Stine. You sold more books than Stephen King. Don't ever forget.
No one disrespect R.L.
Trust me. Never.
All right, guys. Well, that pretty much kind of wraps up our show right there. Krystal, do you want to do a little promo for your show right there?
Yeah. So May 27th. And we're going to be talking about mysterious deaths and murders on movie sets, murders, mysteries, and mayhem. So, if you'd like to join us, we will be there, talking about lots of death.
Lots of death.
And movies.
Death and movies. I mean, yeah.
Awesome. Brandy, do you have any last statements or anything you want to add to the show there?
No, I definitely find this this story and this urban legend that spun off multiple different ways very interesting. I'm still intrigued on who the killer was, though.
I know. I want to reopen this case. Can we? I think we can solve it.
Let's put it on. Landa said he had lots of death. We should put it on your. We're gonna do like a 2-part episode and end up the conclusion on Krystal's new podcast.
Send me the link.
There you go. Well, I'm going to do a completely opposite shout out here. I'm going to promote my nephew's book. My nephew just published a book. He is 17 years old and he just published a book. I'm like, dang, this kid right here. It's on manifestation. So It's called Becoming a Master Manifester by Zachary Stutzman. Definitely go check it out. He's 17. He's lost 115 pounds. He has manifested every positive thing in his life. And he has documented it in his book. So I think for being a 17-year-old, that's pretty damn impressive. So
awesome.
I'm just going to kind of do a little shout out for my nephew right there. But guys, I think this has been an awesome episode. I don't know what we're going to talk about in 2 weeks, but I'm sure we'll come up with something fun. If you guys have suggestions, definitely leave them in the comments and we'll look into it. Brandy, you are always welcome. We love having you on this show.
Yes.
Thank you. It is very enjoyable. It's very nice. It's nice to get to talk about this stuff too, because people around here don't talk about that much.
Well, anytime you talk about lots of death and mystery.
People start to look at you a little weird.
I mean, I'm over here just being like, death.
Oh, gosh.
So, you know.
Wendy, jump back up. Sorry, Stacy.
I can't make more dark humor jokes at work anymore. No one gets them.
No.
Oh, that's sad.
Yeah, I know.
Well,
I know. I can't do it anymore.
Thanks for joining, everybody.
Absolutely. We will see you guys in 2 weeks. Episode to be determined on what we're going to talk about, but we will see you in 2 weeks on Blonde Books and Campfire Tales. Until then, we'll see you then.
Nice one. Bye.